Welcome to Loud History. Today, we delve into the enigmatic life of Jane Seymour, a woman whose quiet strength and strategic patience won her a place in history as Henry VIII's most favored queen. Her story is one of calculated restraint, family ambition, and a legacy that outlasted her brief reign. Through her, we explore the intricate dance of power, loyalty, and survival in the Tudor court. In the treacherous court of Henry VIII, where ambition and scandal reigned, Jane Seymour emerged as a figure of quiet strength. Born around 1508 at Wolfhall in Wiltshire, she was raised in a family that valued discretion over spectacle. Her father, Sir John Seymour, was a battle-hardened knight who served both Henry VII and Henry VIII, teaching his children that true power often lay in silence. Her mother, Marjorie Wentworth, carried the noble blood of Edward III, instilling in Jane a sense of poise and restraint. Among her 10 siblings, Jane stood out not for beauty or wit, but for her patience and modesty. The Seymours were not content to remain in the shadows. Jane's brothers Edward and Thomas were ambitious men who saw her marriage to the king as a path to power. Edward would later become Duke of Somerset and Lord Protector during the reign of his nephew Edward VI, while Thomas married Henry's final wife, Catherine Parr, in a bid to stay close to the throne. Yet their unchecked ambition would lead to their downfall, both executed for treason. Jane, however, learned a different lesson. Survival in Henry's court required obedience, not defiance. Jane's early years at court were spent serving Catherine of Aragon, Henry's first wife. From Catherine, Jane learned the art of dignity and endurance, witnessing how the queen maintained her grace, even as Henry's affections waned. When Anne Boleyn replaced Catherine, Jane observed a different kind of power, charisma, and intelligence, but also saw how Anne's boldness made enemies. Jane absorbed these lessons, understanding that to thrive she must avoid provocation and earn trust through quiet loyalty. As Anne's star began to fall in 1536, Jane was ready. Supported by her family and Henry's advisor, Thomas Cromwell, she was moved to Chelsea, where she lived in luxury, shielded from scandal. When Henry sent gifts, Jane refused them, citing honor, a move that intrigued the king. Just 10 days after Anne's execution at the Tower of London, Henry married Jane. The swiftness of this transition raised questions. Was it fate or a well-timed plan? Jane Seymour brought calm to a court weary of drama. Her motto, "Bound to obey and serve," reflected her approach, simple, modest, and focused on stability. She wore plain gowns, kept a small household, and avoided the extravagance that had marked Anne's reign. Yet beneath her humility, Jane wielded influence with care. One of her first acts was to plead for Princess Mary, Henry's daughter, with Catherine, who had been disinherited. Despite the risk, Jane's gentle persistence succeeded where others had failed, and Mary was welcomed back to court. However, when Jane spoke in favor of the Pilgrimage of Grace, a rebellion against Henry's religious reforms, the king's response was chilling. He reminded her of Anne's fate, and Jane never broached the subject again. In October 1537, Jane gave birth to Prince Edward at Hampton Court Palace. After a grueling 3-day labor, the kingdom rejoiced. Henry finally had his male heir, but joy turned to sorrow as Jane's health deteriorated. Likely suffering from an infection, she died just 12 days later, leaving Henry devastated. Jane's death in 1537 shocked the court. She was given a queen's funeral, a rare honor, and buried at St. George's Chapel, Windsor Castle. Henry, known for his detachment in previous marriages, mourned deeply, wearing black for months. When he died, he chose to be buried beside her, a testament to his enduring affection. Jane's son, Edward VI, ascended the throne at 9, securing her legacy. Her brothers Edward and Thomas Seymour rose to prominence but fell victim to their own ambition, both executed for treason. Jane, however, remained untarnished, remembered as the ideal queen, loyal, virtuous, and dutiful. Yet some historians, like Joanna Denny, suggest Jane was more than a passive figure. They argue she was a master strategist, using her virtue as a shield to achieve her goals without suspicion. Whether she was a meek wife or a cunning player, Jane's legacy endures as the queen who gave Henry his heir and won his heart. To understand Jane Seymour, one must consider the tumultuous Tudor era. Henry VIII, who ruled from 1509 to 1547, was obsessed with securing a male heir. His first marriage to Catherine of Aragon ended in divorce, leading to England's break with the Catholic Church. Anne Boleyn promised a son but failed, and her downfall paved the way for Jane. The Seymours were not of the highest nobility, but they were ambitious. Sir John Seymour was a respected knight, and Marjorie Wentworth's royal blood elevated their status. Edward and Thomas Seymour used Jane's marriage to climb the ranks, but their lack of caution led to their demise. Jane was raised to be virtuous, skilled in embroidery and obedience. Unlike Anne, she lacked formal education in languages or politics, but she possessed a keen sense of timing and observation. Her upbringing and court experiences prepared her for the role she would play. Jane's time serving Catherine of Aragon taught her the value of patience and dignity. Catherine's steadfastness in the face of Henry's rejection left a lasting impression. When Anne Boleyn took the throne, Jane saw a different approach, wit and charm, but also witnessed how Anne's defiance alienated the court. From Catherine, Jane learned to endure. From Anne, she learned what to avoid. Historian Alison Weir notes that Jane was profoundly shaped by Catherine's example, while Anne served as a cautionary tale. When Anne's influence waned, Jane was perfectly positioned to step into the spotlight. By 1536, Anne Boleyn's position was precarious. Accusations of infidelity and treason mounted, and Thomas Cromwell, once her ally, shifted his support to Jane. The Seymours, with Cromwell's help, moved Jane to Chelsea, where she lived in seclusion. When Henry offered gifts, Jane's refusal only deepened his interest. On May 19, 1536, Anne was executed. 10 days later, Henry married Jane in a quiet ceremony. The speed of this transition suggests careful planning. Jane's family was rewarded, and she wore the crown with quiet confidence. Jane's reign brought peace to the court. She reconciled Henry with Mary and avoided political entanglements. But her attempt to support the Pilgrimage of Grace was swiftly rebuffed by Henry, a reminder of her limits. In October 1537, Jane gave birth to Edward, fulfilling Henry's greatest desire. Yet the joy was short-lived. Jane succumbed to complications, likely an infection, and died 12 days later. Henry's grief was profound, and he honored her memory long after her death. Jane Seymour remains an enigma, a queen who achieved greatness through silence and restraint. Whether she was a devoted wife or a subtle strategist, her legacy as the mother of Edward VI and Henry's most mourned queen is undeniable. Her story reminds us that in the game of power, sometimes the quietest players leave the loudest echoes.